Welcome everyone to Edo era Japan. You're going to be entering this marketplace that's selling an abundance of things from wooden rice through to pipes, tobacco and seasonal fish. You're going to have employees that sort of age up and gain experience and later retire. Between the seasons, you're going to get passive incomes from those employees. And then there's fires, and there's also people might starve. And that's Iki. It's a new strategy game for 2 to 4 players from Sorry We Are French, and it's a lot of fun. So how does the game play? Well, there's a number of important factors. First of all, you're going to be moving around the rondel of a market. You're never leaving the market, and you're always moving a certain number of spaces. And that is based on, at the start of the round, based on the fire track, you are going to pick movements of 1, 2, 3 or 4, or a special 1 to 4 space. That will come back to bite you later, but it gives you some choice still. So say I went on the 1 space. When everyone has done this section and we move on to the movement, I would literally move my character once round the rondel. Now, each market space has a shop, and then potentially behind it there will be 2 employees effectively that work there. You're able to always activate the shop's ability. So in this case, I'd move to here and I'd be able to buy a fish token if there was still one there. If there were employees behind this, I'd be able to activate one of the 2 there. Now, I could choose to just activate an employee, just activate the shop, or do 1 employee and the shop. I could also do nothing, though I've never seen anyone take that option. To show that your turn is over, you would then remove your little guy from the track, and that is your turn over. You're going to be doing that effectively 12 times, and then there's a bonus one where you get to pick wherever you want to go at the end. You pick your person off rather than keep going around the market, and you can choose which stall to visit. Now, along that, every 3 turns, or 3 months in this case, the season comes to an end. Anyone that you have recruited, now they're going to give you some passive income. If they're retired, they're still going to give you that income, but importantly, you don't need to feed them anymore. They've gone home, they're not working in your shop, and therefore you don't need to provide them the food. Now that's quite important, because if you can't feed your workers, well, fortunately, while the meeple comes back to you, the card goes. And having the cards at the end of the game is one way of getting points. Players are going to have one of these player boards, and they're double-sided depending on if you're playing with 2 or 3 and 4 players. Basically, this side of things is reminding you how to do that basic turn. Along the top, that's where retired characters go, and if you get one of each type, that's going to be a lot, 25 points at the end of the game. Then you've got the fish that you can buy, and that again shows that you can gain a lot of points from fish. And then there's the tobacco and the pipes. Of course, what's the point of tobacco without a pipe? Well, you'll still get points, but they will be doubled if you have a single pipe. It's an odd thing, but it kind of makes you want at least one of them. And it certainly drives competition. And competition around the market space is both there and not. Spaces at the market aren't blocked. This person can go in the same space. They can use the same shop that's behind the employee and the shop. But if you're there late, if you're there behind someone else, well, maybe they've already bought the token that you wanted. Maybe there's no tobacco left for that season. And then you slowly work out the biggest thing. The thing that really makes this game tick and how people gain experience and retire. If you're using someone else's shop, if you're using this bottom action that someone else's, well, they're going to level up. If they use it, it doesn't level up. They can still gain the benefit, but you are actively helping that player get this character retired. So there's lots of choices. Do I really think that is enough of a benefit to help my opponent? In a 2-player game, it's that bit different, because In 3 and 4 there are 4 slots, 2 behind each shop. On the other side of the board there's only 3, and the middle space is actually accessible. That middle employee is accessible by either of the 2 shops, which means your character could get leveled up if that other player went literally 1 space on again and used them again. But that doesn't get done very often. So there is a final way to level people up, and it's just by going round the rondel. Every time effectively you pass go, you're leveling them up. And it's little things like this that make you think, I could do this time, I could do that. There's been games where no one around the table, a 4-player game, no one has built one of sort of the end game buildings that score lots of points, simply because everyone was focusing on fish or pipes or getting up this fire tracker to not have fires affect them. And we'd almost not forgotten, but we'd not got around to doing that because we were doing so much else. There's a number of ways to score, so regardless of how well you do, you feel like you've picked some tokens up, you've got some employees, hopefully they've not been starved or burnt, and you've done something. So even if you don't win, there's been some progression. Obviously the aim of any game is to gain points, and there are many ways. So you're going to get points for your gold, you're going to get points for your retired people, the fish, the tobacco, the pipes that you've bought along the way, the buildings that you may or may not build. And then there's some employees in the decks that come out in different seasons that will actively give you a passive income of points. And as I alluded to earlier, there's this sort of conundrum of, do I take this action because it's going to be really beneficial to level that person's character up? Those cards that give passive point income are really expensive to buy and to put out onto this market. But they've got an amazing little ability. So when you get to that place, you're like, well, I've kind of got to do it because I'm going to get a lot for it, even though it's helping you. Everyone has the chance, unless they are taking the 1 to 4 movement option, of hiring a character each turn. Now, because of the way the money comes in and doesn't, sometimes you're just going to take some money instead of hiring someone. But with 4 people, there's a lot of chance to hire. And it means you can kind of go, right, okay, I've helped you, I don't mind going on one of your characters. It doesn't matter to me as much because I'm sort of evenly splitting. Now, to get around that on a 2-player game, which I did actually find was quite good. I'm normally adverse to when they're sort of almost like admin to do. But basically at the end of each turn, someone freely adds a card from the market. Each round it flicks between the first and second player. And they add it, but they don't claim it. And it's just there as like a one-time use. So you can line it up for yourself, or just maybe get a card that's kind of good for your opponent in the market out, and they'll be able to use it once, but never get the retiring or the passive income. And it's an interesting choice that fills the market up with sort of neutral people and allows the 2-player game to not feel like there's nothing to do. Because without that, the 3 to 4-player game would just have so much better choices when you're playing. In a 2-player game, you'd go to a space and there'd be no employee, whereas in that 3 and 4-player game, it's rare to go to a stand and not even have the choice of one person whether not to take it, let alone the choice between 2, which in a 4-player game did seem to happen quite a bit. Now, slightly dramatically at the start, I did say, people can starve and there's fires. And, well, the fire track it's something for me where, and this isn't quite a turnaround on a review, but it is something to know. So 3 times during the year, basically partway in Q2 of 3 and 4, there will be a fire, and each time it increases in strength. Now, you randomly draw some tiles, you pick one, and that is one of the 4 sort of shop areas that's going to be burnt down. And I'm not a huge fan of that part of it because it means you can't fully prepare. But what you can do is make sure that your fire is high enough to always stop it. So say you're on the outside space, if your fire level is 6 and the current fire that's about to happen is 5, you'll be absolutely fine. Even if it was 6, you'd be absolutely fine. But say you had a fire strength on this track of 4, well, you could still be alright, because if you build in each space going in, it minuses 1 on that fire strength. So, for instance here, if I had a fire strength of 4, it would be a -1 on the fire strength of 5, that's the spring one, or the summery one, and that would be absolutely fine, all the way down to a -3 in this slot. These do cost more as a result, and because they've got harmony bonuses for point scoring, but there's a nice way you can, squeeze into slots that mean you don't have to mind about fire, or hide behind someone else that's going to stop the fire for you. It just feels sometimes that you either need to commit to this fire track to stop it yourself, or make sure you basically don't do it and kind of risk it. And if you risk it and it pays off, you're fine. But if you risk it and it doesn't, you can lose quite a bit and put you behind. And it feels sometimes if that happens, you've got some sort of unluckiness against you. You've got a 1 in 4 chance that that's happened to you. And it's like, okay, I could have done something to prevent it, but I've been sort of targeted. It could have been any of the other 3 and I'd have been fine. Some people will love the sort of slightly push your luck of don't going up the fire track but still putting people out. And I think other people won't like that sort of luck factor. Now, while I haven't played the original, I can say, in my personal opinion, this production is stunning, and it certainly looks better than the pictures of the old one. I mean, take this box. You've got this glorious inner box art. Let alone that, I know box art's not much, but it really does set the tone for how gorgeous the rest does. It's not just a fancy box and boring game. It's got sort of bright colours. You look around, there's people walking around the market. You've got these 3 different sized meeples for their different purposes. And it's little things like that that look stunning but also really help during the game. This box on the card for the employee is the right size for that meeple. When you level it up, when they gain experience, there's the arrow to tell you to push it up. Then again, and then the final one, it's telling you to take the card on, like the card symbol is there. It's reminding you. Little things like that just make this game easier to play. Like the icon for this track where you're bidding how far you want to go around has this sort of meeple shape on it. And the fact that half of the player board, this is scoring effectively, and effectively this is just reminding you how to play. And it also very nicely reminding you the small tweaks that you do need to do for a 2-player game. So it's great, nice solid production, but it's backed up with being useful. It's not sort of 3 different meeples for the sake of it. They are 3 different meeple sizes, and they are helpful to remind you what they're there for on the board. The rondel itself. Going around here, lining yourself up, going, right, I've got fish this time, and I know I'm going to need to move 3 or 4 to get the actions I want over here next time. So you push yourself up the fire track, you get to pick first, and that's going to be what's allowing you to get around and do what you want. But maybe sometimes you need to spend sandals to move that bit further and try and go earlier in the turn so you're jumping ahead of people to get that token before someone else does. And then every time you get to one of these spaces, you're having a choice. Some of these just straight up have choices, like this one here. You can basically sell different types of goods for money. And then there's the choice of, do I help someone? Do I use this employee behind? And it means every action space throughout the game, the shop one stays the same, but what's behind it changes. So what might be a really beneficial action space for you early on, well, later on it's like, I don't need that employee benefit. I'm going to come over here and use this employee, and hopefully the shop benefit's good for me. Hopefully I've done this game justice. Hopefully you've got an idea of going round this rondel to trigger actions, chaining those actions in terms of taking the shop and then an employee action. You get that, and then how you're eventually turning that into points by using employees or purchasing buildings and retiring people, buying things from this market. It's all interwoven, so it's quite hard to sort of explain, but it's a really interesting game that's definitely going to be hitting this table more and more, because everyone I've shown it to has at least enjoyed it. Some people have been a little ish on the fire tracker, but then by the end of the game they were like, okay, I could have hidden behind someone when the fire came, or maybe I pushed my luck because of it. And there is that push your luck factor, which sometimes some people don't get on with, but for the rest of it, for the choices of moving around the rondel and triggering multiple actions, it feels like you get big turns quite often that change and stuff. So it means that every game feels a little bit different based on who you hire, who you add to the board, where you add it to the board. And it's been great fun, and it still will be, and it will be for a long time hitting the table. So the game is now out in the UK, released on the 21st of October 2021, which is today. Obviously you might be watching this in the future. Just phenomenal game, E-key from Sorry We Are French. For more games, reviews, news and all that sort of jazz, stick around on the channel. Until next time, thanks for watching, and I'm Oliver East, signing out.